Right.
Okay, you're on the air.
All right. Everybody see the presentation here? Move this out of the way. Okay. So, a couple of meetings ago, I think I did one other time, but a couple of meetings ago, I put up a video, an all sky video of it was actually the aurora that was going on. It was kind of cool to see it go through the night. And during that meeting, I had asked if anybody be interested in learning more about an all-sky camera and building one, and I did get some interest. Then I did a poll just to make sure I just wasn't hearing, one person talking loudly or something. And there were a lot of people interested, and obviously you guys are. So I decided to put this presentation together. I had built one about a year and a half ago, and really my goal here is share my experience, how I chose what I wanted to do, and then give you guys an idea of how you could build it yourself and what would be needed to build it, and be more than happy to help. So that's kind of the theme of this. So stop me at any point, ask any questions, and just get into it. So what I want to go through was really what an all-sky camera is. Uh, there's some existing models that are out there, and I have a certain approach that I wanted to take with it, and you guys will hear that. And it's going to focus on the way that I did it, which is actually a way that a lot of other people are doing it. So, what do you need? You're going to need some kind of processor to run the thing. You need power for it. You need a camera, and when I say camera, basically a lens for the processor that I'll talk about in a minute. And then there's some software that's out there that's free, and there's actually a couple different versions of it. I'm going to focus on one particular one tonight that I had used, and I'll give you a good reason why once we get there. Talk about an enclosure to put it in. It's got to be weatherproof. I'll be using the term IP67. That's a standard for weatherproof to a certain temperature and humidity and all that stuff. And then we'll talk about how I actually built it, and how it could be built, any kind of upgrades we may want to do after the build, and you certainly can do it both on the software and on the physical all-sky camera itself. I'll kind of wrap it up with a conclusion, and then have some suggested next steps that we could do. And then Q&A, but like I said, stop me at any point and ask questions because I know it's all new to you guys, or most of you guys. All right, so real question is, what is it? What's an all-sky camera? You look at the photo in the lower left, that's actually one of the first all-sky cameras ever built. It was built somewhere around 1915, and it was meant to view, and I guess it was like a snapshot you take and you'd have to develop it, but it was meant to view the clouds, actually, to look at what the weather was and perhaps do some predictions. The newer ones, the approaches you see in the upper right and lower right, really closer to what we're going to be talking about tonight. You can reuse a lot of things that you already have. If you happen to have the processor or Raspberry Pi hanging around, you can use that. You have an unused ASI ZWO camera, an uncooled one's pretty much ideal for this. And that was one of the first tries that I did at really seeing the night sky. And I know Mark had tried out some things too, more on the astrophotography side. And then the way in which you want to use it is you want to try to get it out there in a permanent fashion. So here's an example of somebody just nailing a 2x4 to their deck, wrapping the enclosure around a 2x4 with some steel straps, and it stays out there and he can do his thing. So if you really want to know what the all-sky camera definition is, it's or what you read there. It was used originally for meteorology, agronomy for people that did a lot of farming. They like to see what the sky is looking like. And then hemispherical photography, plant canopy geometry, like I said, more agronomy related stuff. So there's all kind of uses for it. Mine was pretty much, hey, I want to see the night sky. I want to see the stars that I never stay out late enough to, and some other things which we'll talk about in a minute. All right. So I did see some time lapses on YouTube. Talked with a Naperville Astronomy Association member about the way that he did it, and it was close to the picture that you saw on the previous page. And I had an existing Raspberry Pi 4. It was just sitting in my box of crap. And I said, okay, well, what can I do? You know, way to do it. I didn't really like his approach, build wise, but I said, well, let me see what I can do here. So my goals, you know, keeping the cost to a minimum. And by doing that, I'd have to reuse any existing materials on hand and change the design as needed. And I did wind up changing both hardware and software designs. I wanted to make it as compact as possible. The worst thing I could do is put a 3-inch PVC pipe up on the house, and my wife would kill me and the neighbors would complain. So I wanted to make it compact as possible. I did a little bit of research. I did see a project example, which we're going to use tonight, and it's really the basis for how I did it, where the example used a Raspberry Pi and a Raspberry Pi camera that's attached to it. It utilized free software and it used some 3D printed parts. And I have a 3D printer, and I said, okay, well, you know, let me take a crack at it, see what I can do. So this was my approach. More than happy to share this link with you guys. So it's actually in the presentation, and it's something you can get after the meeting. But basically, this was my approach. I did find this by looking around on what's called Thingiverse. It's really a place for 3D printing and doing things, but it happened to have an all-sky camera build. And I said, you know what? It's compact. It looks relatively, you know, simple to build, and that's for me. So I went for it. So bill of materials. So this really are all the pieces. This is all the pieces that I use. So the Raspberry Pi, Micro Center has this about $45, but I had it. So luckily I didn't need to spend money there. Um, I looked at the Raspberry Pi branded HD camera, and it turns out that I found a better camera, which unfortunately wasn't supported by the software. But I said, well, you know, I'm a software guy. Let me see what I can do. And it was better than a Raspberry Pi branded camera. It was half the cost. It already had a lens, and what's uh, important to know is if you buy a Raspberry Pi HD camera that goes on a Raspberry Pi, it's about $78, I think, or 75, but you have no lens with it. You have no camera, no sensor. So this one came with the camera and the lens all together, and for the half of the price. And turns out it had higher resolution too. So that's how I went with that. The you don't have a place really for a hard drive, but the Raspberry Pi supports an SD card not only for the operating system but for storage. So luckily, in the last few years, these cards have dropped in price immensely. So you can get a 128 gig card, which holds about 15, 20 days of data, turns out. You wanted to keep all your data for about $12. I think it may even be less now since I put this together. Power supply you need. This one we'll talk a little bit about how I approached it, but when you're setting up, and for every Raspberry Pi you normally buy, you actually have one of these anyways. And it's basically a USB-C connection to the Raspberry Pi. You have a 3 amp USB-C charger for your phone. You can use that too. Um, your project box, that gray box you saw in the previous picture, that's an IP67 enclosure that is perfect. To me, it was perfect for this. That was $12. The acrylic dome, I kind of looked around for one that would be good. There's probably better quality ones. The quality meaning how transparent they are and how scratch resistant and all that stuff. But for my purpose, I said, well, let me just start with this one. And it was $9. And then miscellaneous parts. You got to have some wires to run the power. You got to have a connection inside the Raspberry Pi itself once it's in the box. You need some nuts and bolts and screws, really small ones, 3D printed parts, and all these I had in the junk boxes that I have. So basically, for me, well, if you went out and bought all these, it's about $137. If you have that Raspberry Pi and miscellaneous parts, like I did, it came in around $77, $80. So to me, it's cheaper than dedicating a ZWO camera to it and having a Raspberry Pi in there. To me, it was a win-win. 3D printed parts. So in each one of these, I don't know if you can see the pointer I have, but the one here is the base that goes inside the box. The Raspberry Pi screws into this. This goes on top of the base and holds the camera. This is actually the platform for the camera here. And then this is something that I printed out originally, but wound up never not using. It's a piece of plastic that's really there to shield the camera from reflections of the Raspberry Pi LEDs that flash a lot during the captures. I wound up putting a black piece of cloth there, and it worked, to me, it worked better. So, physical build. I'm sorry, any questions to this point? Okay. All right, so how it was physically built? Well, you have the enclosure here. I took a 2-inch hole saw and I cut the top of that enclosure. And then I also marked out the area where the dome had attachment holes. And that way I was able to drill those out later. You see all the screws I had in the upper right here. That's my kind of my junk box full. And then mounted the 3D printed base in the enclosure itself. And I did use, I had some PC motherboard standoffs. I'm not sure you know what they are, but they're little brass um, standoffs that accept screws into them. They stand maybe about a 1/4 inch high to 3/4, and I thought that was a good way to attach the Raspberry Pi inside the base and also hold it off being flush with this. And very honestly, I didn't really need all those attachments, so I just put 2 standoffs in there. The Raspberry Pi went in next, and then the attachment, and it's pretty important to attach the cable for the camera first, and basically you'll have that to run out on the camera base itself. And what you do need to do is you need to install the AllSky software on the SD card prior to loading this in, because frankly, there's just not enough room in there to fish your fingers in there. At least mine are too big to get the SD camera in there. So you have to really do all that software work, which I'll talk about later, before you put the Raspberry Pi in there. The good news is once it's in, you can communicate with it and you don't really need to remove that card, and you can actually update the software wirelessly. And that's one thing I didn't mention yet, but this is all Wi-Fi. You could hook up an Ethernet cable to it, but it's kind of overkill. All right, and then I added the top area for the camera. which was mounted on there, ran the cable out. You notice the wire that's down at the bottom there, that's really the power that's going into the Raspberry Pi and goes out through the box through a grommet that's sealed up with a sealer. If you want to use what's called power over Ethernet, you could do that. You'd have to get a bigger enclosure. And power over Ethernet has some advantages in that, number one, it's connected via Ethernet, so you got a quicker connection. Not that quick as it turns out, not that much quicker as it turns out, because I did try that. And also you can run power using a power injector, but that leads into more costs and more complexity. Frankly, it not really needed. What I did do for the power was I had a power supply that I ran I ran the wire out to a 2.1 millimeter by 5.5 millimeter DC power jack. Same plug as you've seen that goes into many power applications, your TV, your laptop, that kind of thing. And I use that for testing it out, and it turns out I never changed it. I just kept it.
So, Brian, there's a question out there.
Yeah, sorry.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
So with the power over Ethernet connection,
Hmm.
the Raspberry Pi 4 and 5 actually have a pretty hefty current load.
Hmm.
Will PoE keep up with that?
Oh yeah. PoE can go up to 50, I think it's 50, what's 48 volt standard. The newer PoE is 58 volts. And you think about the amount of current going through a DC connection, probably can go up to 12 amps. So it to me, it's more than enough. I've actually tried it. If you know a little bit about Raspberry Pi, they have these things called hats, and they have a PoE hat that's pretty inexpensive, about $12. And it actually has a fan on it. And I tried that, and I actually put a current draw on it. It drew, I think it was 1.5 amps more than it did when it didn't have to run that PoE hat. So I think it's entirely possible, and I've got the injector if I ever want to run the Ethernet cable again. Anybody else? Okay. This is the light shield I talked about. But what's more important here is talk about the camera. So you can't see it, but the ribbon cable is actually tucked in here and comes out. And actually you have to kind of tuck it up a little bit when you put the top of this enclosure on. But this is the camera. It's very tiny. If you take a look at it, the camera itself does get interference from the LED lights. So this approach was to resolve that. I actually thought it was a little bit of overkill to do it, and to me, it didn't allow any heat to dissipate up towards the dome. So I actually replaced that with a black cloth. But either way, I think it could be used, and it probably is going to be okay. We'll talk about the Cameron specs in a minute here. In any case, the last piece that goes on is the top, and this dome is attached through the screws that you see where I drilled the holes. And then I did put a sealer in. This is before I put the sealer on, so I removed this dome, put sealer on the bottom, and then put sealer on the edge. And it's been out there, what, about a year and a half, no leaks, at least not that I know of. So it seems to work okay. All right. So that's the build. Any other questions about the build before I get into the software? Okay. Um, there is a local fellow there, and some of you may know him. I don't know, but Eric Clays. He's a local astronomy buff. He's with the NAA, and he's a Bell Labs guy, and I've known him for years actually. But he actually wrote all Sky software. And I was pretty shocked because I didn't know he wrote it and went up to the GitHub site, saw his name, and I called him up, and he was, yeah, it's mine. So wound up using it not because of that reason, but because I like it. It's pretty compact and does the basics that I want. But let's talk about it a little bit. So, anyways, I work with him, and I was able to create an image file that's way easier than his setup, and he wound up using some of what my ideas were for his setup in the future. But my goal was to create an image file that I could give to other people, and they could just image it to the SD card and get off and running with it. And a lot of people have done that pretty successfully. Um, he wrote the software for either Raspberry Pi branded camera or a ZWO camera. So I did need to modify the software install to use the RGCam that I use. And if you know anything about Raspberry Pi, there's something called libcamera that actually have to modify in order to use the RGCam. And the RGCam team uh, already knew about this and gave me what I needed to change it. So that's all built into the image that I have. And I also have written instructions, and they're pretty much step by step. And I can put that on Groups.io for everybody, and I will do that. The image for the software is way too large to put up there. You really need an 8 gig image. Sorry, 8 gig image in order to do it. So if anybody wants to build it, I'm happy to come with a laptop to a workshop that we're going to have to hopefully in the future to build this and image the actual software. And I just want to make sure you guys know that there's alternatives to AllSky. There's something called Indie AllSky, which actually is a bit more powerful. They're both open source. This one happens to be a little bit older and a little bit more powerful. If you want, you can go in that direction. I like simplicity and I didn't need all the features. So I wound up using Eric's. So let's talk about the software. It runs on a Raspberry Pi 2, 3, and 4. Um, Somebody that I know tried to put on a Zero. It's called a Zero. It's a real cheap one, and it was a dog. You don't want to do that. If you want to run it, I'd suggest the 3 or 4. And like I said, with at least 2 gig of memory. It is wireless, web-based access in order to get to it, at least in the implementation I got. And it's a user interface through the web, which I'll demo later. It does automatically adjust the gain and exposure times based on ambient light so that you'll see it when you first start it up. It might be way overexposed or way underexposed, but 3 or 4 frames later, it'll kind of catch up and adjust and give you a good quality image based on your settings, which we'll talk about. It does store individual images. My images come in every 45 seconds or so during the day. One thing you can also do is host the database for this remotely and move all these images up to some remote location and have people access it from there. And there is a website that actually, and I'll show you this later, but actually has capabilities to host everybody's AllSkies across the globe. And it's pretty neat. You can be part of that. And I'll show you some examples of that later. It creates and stores star trails. It really one of the attractive things to me is take a look at the star trails and see if I could pick out, which stars are making what trails and also which planets. And I'll show you some examples of those, and it's pretty cool. It does create a 24-hour time lapse out of all of those videos. Sorry, out of the individual pictures, and you can view that in locally on your system. You can actually download it if you want to and keep it locally. It does something called keyograms, which um, the other indie alts guy does. It's kind of a weird thing, but it's a time versus latitude plot. And you'll have to view it to see what it means, but it's kind of interesting because you can actually see when you're um, what happens as the sun goes across and the stars go across, but it's all in a condensed graphical kind of format. So I'll show you an example of that. I don't typically look at those, but it's an interesting feat. It will remove older files, so you don't have to do a bunch of cleanup. You can set it for how many days you want to retain your files. Like I said, I'm between 13 and 15 days, so I set it for 10, and I never run out of space. You can also it can put up a lot more information than that as well. I tend to keep it clean, but you can actually add quite a few things like temperature, if you have temperature sensors, things like that. Um, Global All Sky Map, I talked about that. That requires a website on the actual software, but turns out I wind up putting on a website, so you can use that. And bottom line is open source and free. Any questions? It's pretty powerful actually. The actual installation, I created a document that has all the installation instructions, and basically this is the first page of it. It's 3 pages. Use what's called a VNC client to get to the Raspberry Pi. I've set up VNC inside the image. VNC is a free client you can download, and maybe you only use it once to do this and never use it again. You want to do this, like I said, prior to putting Raspberry Pi in the enclosure. You got to know a bit of 10 or 11. Everybody uses Windows, so I think that's kind of a no-brainer. And you do have to have, when you're setting it up, some kind of a tabletop install, I'll call it, where you put it all together for the diagram here. So you got the camera, you put your power in, and you put a way to connect it, some kind of a local area network. You can actually plug in an Ethernet port, or you can do it over your wireless. The first go round, you want to do an Ethernet connection right to your router so that you get an IP address. You don't have to screw around with trying to figure out how to get your Wi-Fi password into it. And then you're going to need, like I said, a SD card, power supply, a local network Ethernet port, and a computer to use to do all of it. Sounds a little daunting, but it's actually pretty straightforward. And if you're going to actually build one, I'm certainly there to help. All right, quick view of some of the items that are actually in the All Sky software. So you'll always have a live view capability. You have a user interface, and this one happens to be set on the All Sky settings. So these are typical daytime settings you have, capturing, auto exposure it'll do. And then there's a whole lot of settings for tweaking, and the key is tweaking your brightness and your gain, and if you want to do auto white balance, you can actually do that. Things like that. Anyways, going on the left-hand side, you can get a live view. Here's where your images are stored. You know what? I'll go through this in the demo. I won't waste time here. Here's the typical single image that I get at night. This is probably about, it looks like about 9 o'clock. And So it really depends how you set up your camera. You can actually overexpose a little bit and see more stars, but then if the moon comes around, it really nukes out your whole image, and you got to find a happy medium, but that's practice. Here's an example of the star trails. Here's this happens to be this is Jupiter, I'm pretty sure. Down here is Sirius. So you can see, and then there's planes flying through. You might catch a satellite, you might catch a meteor. There are actually settings to look for meteors in the software. This is the kilogram that I was talking about, and it's kind of a hard thing for me to conceptualize what you're really looking at, but it's really a conglomeration of by hour of all of the events that happen during that time. So you're not looking at a bunch of pictures or a time lapse. It's all compressed into a small drawing or small graphic. This is the global all sky map that I was talking about. Each one of these pins are either live cameras or cameras that have been built and just happen to not be shared globally. So if you have a website and you have a DNS set up for that, you can upload your images every night to that website, and people can access the all sky camera in real time. Here's an example of one that's in Naperville, and if you click on that, you'd see more. All right, so I'm going to do a all sky demo here real quick. See if I can switch over to a different screen. I'm going to figure this out here. I'm going to stop the share. Share out.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
Just for those who are familiar with Raspberry Pis,
Mm-hmm.
what you can do, you still have when you load this image onto the drive, you still have the command line if you are connected to the Raspberry Pi. So
Sure.
you can still set up things the way you normally set up a Raspberry Pi, hook it up to a monitor and a keyboard,
Mm-hmm.
and you can still do all the Raspberry config stuff.
Correct.
If you're familiar with a Raspberry Pi, if you're not, then you want to do it in another way,
Yeah.
like Brian was
I,
describing.
yeah, I've actually done all that in the image. So really the goal, and you'll see in the instructions when I upload them, the goal really is get an Ethernet port and load VNC, and you'll see everything is basically set. But you could download the software yourself. You could set it up yourself if you're familiar with it. Yeah, no problem. All right, let me see if I can share out my screen here. Just a second. Share, I want to share my Oscar camera. Okay. So you guys should be seeing this. This is this is a live view. Can you guys see this?
Yeah, we could see the
Yeah,
raindrops.
yeah, that's just want to make sure. Yeah, this was the great demo I was going to show the stars and stuff, but no, you can't see anything. But let's talk about what you are seeing. This is a website. Basically the camera that I have outside is sharing out this web page. This is the All Sky software. So this is the live view. This is a view where you have the images stored here. So this is about 10 days, maybe less. And give you some examples of what's up there. So I'll pick a good day here. Yesterday was interesting. So here is every single image. So if you happen to see a meteor go by and you know what time it was, you could upload that. keep that as a keepsake. Show you some interesting star. There's some star trails from like September 10th, actually October 9th. So it's quite a bit of detail in these. Then there's this is the video that was taken, and I'll show you. So here's, I've got the camera's got a 140-degree lens on it. It's not quite a fisheye, but what I do like is you're not seeing, well, I do see the edge of my house up here, but you're not seeing like houses all around a big black area around, like I've seen in some of the all-Scott cameras. I happen to like this. Some people like a total fisheye. The advantage of the fisheye is that you do see pretty much all the sky you can ever see by just looking up wherever you are. But also you can actually put more detail in the margins. If you want to put more of this kind of information, you'd have a place in the margin you could put it. Anyways, so I'll run this is from, oh yeah, this is where I put it inside for a while, looked at it. You saw this. This is where we did I was looking for the aurora and caught a lot of it here. So you're seeing some of it here. So again, 45-second exposures on average. This one's 35, I think, it's set up for. There goes, pretty sure that's Jupiter. There's Orion. So there's your 24 hours. And kilogram for that day should be interesting. Yeah, so it caught the aurora here. And it also caught when I had it inside my house for setting it up. Okay, what else did I think I showed everything there. So again, you can keep probably about 10 days, maybe up to 15 days on the 128 gig card. Here are all the settings. We talked about this a little bit. So you have daytime settings here, you got nighttime settings here. You have ones that are common to both. And then you have your image overlay settings, what they look like, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then if you wanted to upload to the All Sky map in the website, you could also do that. Let's talk about the All Sky map for a minute. So here's a view that's pretty much global. And really interesting about this is you can take a look. I don't know if somebody's got anything up here. So there's their camera. Well, this one's old, but there was a camera from looks like July. They used to have it. And you can still see all the things that you saw previously. Let me go back here. His thing here. And I'll show you ones closer to us. I actually don't have mine up now, but here's this is actually the fellow that wrote the software. So here's what I meant by putting more into the margins. So he's got a lot of technical data that he uses, I guess, to help him make sure everything's going good. It does have a plugin that tells you when things are visible or should be visible. It's during the day, so you can't really see it in this image. And then temperature that's inside. You can also see data on what the actual camera is. So he's using the same RGCam, using a Raspberry Pi 4 2 gig, and it has both the versions of the website and the All Sky software. So yeah, pretty pretty cool stuff. Again, optional if you want to put that up there, great. If you don't need to do it. The other thing that is also available, and this is right on the website when you're doing the camera, excuse me, when you're in the camera, is you have the complete documentation for the software. So how to set it up, how to do the layouts, um, constellation overlays, things like that. I haven't actually gotten into a lot of these yet, and I probably will during the winter because probably not any other cool stuff to do. All right, back to the user interface itself. So you can save those changes. It'll restart the AllSky, which is a safe thing to do after you make the changes. There is an editor for putting in information into the AllSky that basically says whether or not you want to do certain things. So you want to upload to your website. When I had my website up in testing, I had that as true. The upload frequency is every day. The size of the image, you can actually make it smaller than it actually is the camera sensor size to save space. I like it as big as I can. I'll take the 10 days instead of 30 days by doing that. There are different modules for the camera. So, for example, the nighttime modules, I'm not sure you can read these too well, but things like star counts, you can add those to it. Meteor detection, so it might, have a little note that pops up if you see a meteor. Not sure what the clear sky alarm is actually. Maybe if you got a clear sky, then you want to go out and image for that night. I've got a couple of things up here. And then during the day, it also has things you can set up for the day. Intermediate images, you can set up a script. Same thing with the clear sky alarm. If you had a local area network connection, this would show you the stats. I have a LAN connection, sorry, a wireless LAN connection. So what am I sitting at 70%? It's about 40, 50 feet away from where we are. It does support, the Pi does support 5G, so you're good to go there. System information, it does actually put that up for you so you can see whether your Raspberry Pi is working okay. So, no throttling is good. I've got 7% of memory used, so I could actually stick a lot more images in there if we needed to. No CPU load, it's just basically taking a snapshot every now and then. CPU temperature and then the disk usage, about 18%, which is where I should be. All right, so I am going to go back to the presentation and finish up. All right, I did want to mention, let me just blow this up here. Did want to mention that you could do some upgrades once you have it working, and I'll probably do some of these. Just to give you an idea, you can get some dew on the dome. I've never had frost, but you can actually, I take that back. I did get frost one time. And there is a way to minimize that. There are dew heaters you can buy, but they're pretty expensive. All you need to do is get a string of resistors. If you got a 12-volt power you can run to it, as well as the 5-volt, you could actually just run a bunch of 5-watt resistors, and that'll heat up things very nicely. You do have to upgrade your power supply for that. There are Raspberry Pi sensors, so temperature, humidity, all that stuff, and there's all-in-one modules you can get that support that. You will need to go out and get some additional software. Eric has some of that, and then there's other that's open source that you can get that and load onto your system. We talked about this before, but power over Ethernet, you'd need a direct connection to the Ethernet port. The plus is that you won't have to run a separate power supply up to it. You can run that from your switch, or just basically use a PoE injector and a switch. If you don't have a PoE switch, you will need the module, an injector, and you need what's called a hat, PoE hat that goes on the Raspberry Pi. More cost, a little bit more functionality, but you can do fine with just your 5 volt. And once you start adding more electronics, it's more heat. The Raspberry Pi is going to get hot. It already has a heat sink, but you probably want to put a fan on it as well at that point. Now, the lens, I was wrong. Actually, I said 140. It's actually a 120-degree lens. So it's not a fisheye lens. If you wanted to get a fisheye lens, there's third-party ones that you can get. If you go through Timo or place like AliExpress, there you can get them for $10 and put them on and have fun with that. So just to wrap up things, for anybody who wants to do the build, I'm going to suggest we hold a workshop once everyone has acquired the build components. You're going to need some basic tools. I have these tools. I could bring them to the workshop, but of course you got to have all your components for the bomb that I had on the previous slide. I need a hole saw. I have it. Excuse me, a 2-inch hole saw. You can use the same enclosure. This is the one that you'd need in the same dome. Drill and bits, you got to have that for the dome attachment. The camera base, even though I printed it out, I still had to actually drill holes because the holes that you need are pretty tiny. And then you need something for the power outlet itself. So if you're going to run a wire out, you got to drill a hole in that, put a grommet in there. Waterproof sealer for the dome, also around the grommet. Any kind of small screws or standoffs and the grommets that you have. If you don't have them, they're pretty inexpensive to buy. Ace Hardware has all that stuff. You got to have a laptop to flash the image. If you come to the workshop, I'll have my laptop and I can do the imaging. It takes about 10 minutes to image that SD card. So just line up your SD cards and I'd be willing to do it. Now, 5 people indicated that they wanted to do the build on the poll that I took. So I actually pre-printed 5 sets of these 3D printed components. So you don't have to find a 3D printer. I've done that for you guys. Any kind of donation is appreciated. I kind of ran out of filament, so that'd be nice. And then we can pick a date for the build workshop and start when we're ready. So I got a question, Al, and I was talking to Mark about this. If people are interested in doing this, I was thinking about maybe doing the workshop at Peck Farm. Wouldn't make that big of a mess, I don't think. I could bring the power vac if we do a little bit of drilling, but what do you think?
Yeah, always a possibility. Obviously, we need to work with them on that.
Mhm.
So it would depend on time of year. The summertime, they're real busy. Around the holidays, they'll get real busy. But then after that, there's going to be time where buildings are available. So always a possibility. Mark, have we ever approached them on something like this before or no? Using the
Oh, we've done
facility
a
for a
couple. Yeah,
project?
we've done a couple things like this. But Brian, how long would the workshop last?
It would basically be, I'd probably do a demo of like putting together one for somebody and people could follow and they could take it home and do it. But the drilling, I mean, I don't know how many people have a 2-inch drill, but I'm thinking an hour, hour and a half.
Okay.
You're probably out.
Okay.
And the other question I got is for the people that are on the call, who's interested in actually building this? Anyone? Got 1, got 2. All right.
I've already built the functional portion of it. I use the HD camera and a ZWO fisheye lens,
Yeah.
which was like $20.
Hmm.
Um, and I've got it working. What I'm working on is a my idea is to be able to take it out on the field. And so I want to have it have its own battery pack
Hmm.
in the box, in the weatherproof box, and be able to like set it out in my backyard or out in a field and watch anything from thunderstorms to just the night sky.
Hmm.
So I've bought lots of weatherproof connectors and switches and stuff like that. And so I'm designing a weatherproof box that will hold all that stuff along with all the wiring on the inside. And you were talking about the heating. I'm using the heat off of the Raspberry Pi 4, the fan to defog the or to keep the dome warm.
Yeah. I don't even have a fan, and it keeps it pretty warm. So yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, it's a unique idea. If you've got you're probably a good example of what you can do with it, right? I mean, the
Well, I
way.
haven't done it yet. I've got all the pieces. I'm trying to, it's the actual box and holding it together. So I really want to find that the print that you made. I really want to see that, see if I can alter it for my size box. Um, so that I can use something like that to hold the camera, because that's a much cleaner method than what I was going to do.
Okay. Yeah, so Al, you were talking about during the summer they're busy and stuff. My thought is there's nothing else to do during the winter, so I'd say we do it as soon as we can.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And again, if we were to approach Park Farm, normally you reserve it, and I do believe that, like, for example, when we were just here, there was a birthday party before, they
Mhm.
do pay for that. They actually rent it. Now,
Sure.
our arrangement, we do the star parties
Hmm.
in consideration of the star parties, we get that for our regular meetings. So, could there be a possibility to approach them on simply another meeting time? I suppose we could.
Yeah.
But in general, yes, you're right. The winter months are ideal for a project like this.
Yeah. I mean,
If
nothing
if
else.
not there, what town do you live in, Brian?
West Aurora.
Um, so if anybody, from what I understand, the libraries are very good at renting, at just allowing you to use rooms. It's a lot like Peck Farm where they justify their spending by how many people use the rooms that they have.
Yeah. I actually approached Makerspace kind of thing. I approached was it what the West Aurora branch of the library from Aurora, and they were like, "Gee, we don't do that stuff," even though they had a 3D printer. So, well, I can try Sugar Grove next. We're also a auxiliary member of that. But I got an inside on the library in Sycamore, but that's a bit of a drive.
Not for me.
Yeah, for other people. But yeah, so anyways, how many
Yeah,
people
well,
have
we
a
could,
Raspberry? Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
we could check with Peck Farm, because we don't do the public star parties January, February, so maybe we could pick one of those months to like January.
Yeah,
Say, hey, is it okay if we have an extra meeting this month? That type of thing.
yeah,
So I had a quick
That's a good
question.
point.
I
yeah.
had a quick question. Did you ever
Sure.
capture the Starlink satellites on the All Sky?
Never checked. I may have and not even known it, you know, could have. I've done um maybe see I'll turn it off and on, when I know that there's something interesting going on, or it's a clear sky like rainy tonight, it's no fun. But sometimes I just yeah, I'll shut it down, won't do anything with it. But when I do and I don't have it mounted up on my roof yet, I've got it sitting out on the patio, but if I do that, I'll do 24/7.
So that was what I was gonna ask is about your mounting. So you still have it so it can be moved around. It's just sitting on
Yeah.
the patio.
Um, I should have included a picture of that, but I
It's
didn't.
okay. It's okay.
But yeah, like I have a plug. See if I have them here still. I don't think I have them here anymore, but it's the same thing as a jack you'd see going into a laptop. I've got that, but I've got the female version of that. And then I don't know how much you know about electronics, but I had an old 19-volt laptop charger that I used a buck converter,
Mhm.
which basically knocked voltage down to 5 volts. And I've got that sealed up, so it's weatherproof. Run my extension cord out there, plug it in, and that's it, which is close to your idea, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. But amperage wise, I mean, it's going to draw quite a bit of current, so you need a pretty good battery, I would think, for your
Yeah, I actually tried it out just in the house
Mhm.
where I just had it sitting and running on one of these batteries, and it lasted for not all day, but it certainly lasted for 9 hours.
And what software
Um,
was it?
it was the same. It was your same software.
Oh, same software, All Sky. Yeah.
Yeah, same. Yeah, the All Sky software. I
Hmm.
had it running, and it was just taking pictures of the ceiling in my kitchen,
Yeah.
but it took those pictures for 9 hours before the battery died.
That's probably more than you'd be out in the field for. I would think. Yeah. Cool.
So
How many
Brian,
people?
Brian
Yeah.
mentioned that I tried something last year. He had the guide camera on sale, I think, right? Or the planet, whatever planetary thing you
Yeah, it
had.
was the 290 MC. Yeah.
Right. And what I tried to do was my idea was okay, an all sky camera with a hydrogen alpha filter on. And if you guys don't know, I'm kind of stuck on hydrogen alpha imaging, right? But I thought that would be a pretty cool thing is
Got
to,
better.
Goes fast.
huh?
Oh, there. Yeah, you froze up
You
for a second.
froze.
Please repeat.
Well, it didn't work out because I couldn't get the filter in the right place for focus.
Oh yeah, that was
Mark
the
Christensen and I tried different things with different like
that was
adapter
the
tubes and
hydrogen
stuff like
alpha
that.
filter. Yeah.
Just could not get it to focus right.
Mhm.
It worked otherwise in the backyard, taking
Yeah.
pictures of the constellations and that. But
Mhm.
so that's when I ended up going with the camera lens thing that I ended up with. That you guys saw some of that with the
Mhm.
mosaic. So that's fine.
Yeah, there's many ways to do it. And by the way, if you got a Windows laptop, there is an all sky version for that. Not by Eric, but um forgot who built it, but that's open source as well. So you could always play around with that if you didn't want to build the enclosure and use the Raspberry Pi. But I wanted to ask, how many people have a Raspberry Pi already that they would use? Yeah, okay. It seems like me. I mean, I bought it and I'm like, yeah, I used it for my 3D printer, and it's like, yeah, I don't need it for that. Then I threw it in a box, so this was just something to do with it. But anyway, so that's my talk. I think the next step is we, try to figure out a date for the workshop. I would just say that if anybody wants to actually go ahead and start, just give me a call or send me an email or whatever, and I'll be more than glad to help. It's pretty straightforward. I'll put the instructions. Well, the presentation will go up. Uh, this is going to go up on I guess this will be recorded or is being recorded, so that's good. And then I also will for anybody who needs it, just give me an SD card, and I'm more than willing to flash it and get it back to you.
Yeah, the other thing is going to be, and at your earliest convenience, you do want to get a message out in the groups IO that we had the meeting, number of people that attended, there is an interest, you already have, it looks like appears to be maybe
Mhm.
the first one or two people interested. I was
Mhm.
looking on my phone, I think there was one other person that was supposed to be on that did say they weren't able to at the last
It was
minute,
Bill.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and name escapes me, so you probably might have at least one other person. And then Mark, maybe you can help me with this being fairly new to it. I'm not sure if it's uploading this, your recorded presentation into Groups IO or you just sending out the link. But either way, get
You're
that
right.
message
What
out,
what
make it
happens is
available.
I upload it to the club's YouTube channel and then send out the
Perfect.
link.
Yeah,
then
because then maybe in the
I've got
over the next couple of days, you might pick up another one or two.
Yeah,
I've got
maybe
a
just put
I've got a
a
Word
note up
document
on,
with the guest list today, so you know
yeah,
who attended. So I'll send that to Brian and Al as well.
yeah, that'd be good.
Perfect.
Yeah. But anyways, I hope you guys got something out of this, and to me, it was fun building it and having it out there. And it's really too bad it's raining tonight. Couldn't show you what's out there now, but when you catch stuff, it's pretty cool on it, like the aurora and seeing. I did see last year. I did see the some of the meteors from the Perseids, so was that sensitive to catch it. So, anyways.
Yeah, that looks really cool. Thanks, Brian, for all the time that you put into this. I can see you really put a lot of effort into not only doing the configuration of the camera, but documenting it for all of us.
Yeah.
So much appreciated. I definitely am interested. I don't think I'm ready just quite yet to embark on it, just because of all that's going on at work and stuff. But I probably will join the meetings and kind of observe what's going on there as you guys are building these. I was really kind of fascinated by your Star Trails shot there. I noticed right in the very center of that was a little crescent-shaped thing, looked almost like a crescent moon. I'm assuming that's Polaris.
That's Polaris.
Yep.
Because you often hear that Polaris is just slightly off of north, by about 1 degree, and that Star Trails really demonstrated that there, where you had that little kind of crescent moon-looking thing.
It could also be an uneven patio.
Yeah, it could be that too, or maybe slightly off of
It
north.
it should be tighter than that, I think. But
So
anyway.
do you have to polar align the Skycam then, like you would any other camera?
No, you don't. But if I was smart, I just go out there tonight. It won't because it's raining, and orient it so that north is north. Top is north. That way's what would that be if that's north? East would be, yeah, east would be to the right, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. Put
Yeah.
cardinal points on it and
Mhm.
make it official, but I'm still playing.
Yeah,
I have a
so
question.
a lot of cool
Yeah.
stuff.
So is your camera a high definition
Yeah.
camera? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's an IMX 519, so you can look up the specs on that. But it beat the snot out of the Raspberry Pi HD camera, both in sensitivity and resolution
Right.
for
Because
half the price.
I had a friend a year ago who offered to show me some plans for a high definition all sky camera. So
Mhm.
as soon as I said yes, he ghosted me.
Oh,
And yesterday I emailed him to remind him he was supposed to get back to me on that stuff. And I'm still waiting for a reply. So maybe it's a dead end and I got to go down your route.
maybe, yeah,
Um,
maybe. I mean, there's nothing unique about what I've done. There's many ways to spin it. You go up on the GitHub site, you'll see all the cameras that are supported. You'll see all the Raspberry Pis that are supported. Do it however you
does
want.
Does anybody make a kit with all the stuff that, like all the cases and everything, and the dome and all that stuff? Like people have a Raspberry Pi kit. You can buy the Cana kit
Yeah,
from Amazon.
I've never seen it.
And well, there you
I've
go.
never seen it.
I take
If you're
no, I
looking
take
for
that
something
back.
to do
I take
on your
that
not.
spare
back.
time,
I
get
actually did. No, Greg,
entrepreneur.
I actually did see one, and it was on the order of $500.
Yeah,
And
a lot
I
of
was like,
legwork to put all that stuff together.
yeah,
Get
well,
on Shark Tank.
being an engineer, I
Well,
love to tinker with this stuff.
especially if it came with the software you were talking about, where you would do the easy install. That's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
One
yeah.
question comes for me, and Greg, maybe you can answer this because you're an ASI Air guy, but isn't an ASI Air just a Raspberry Pi in a pretty case?
Pretty much.
Okay, so would somebody be able to take an ASI Air and incorporate it into this and use that for the Raspberry Pi part of it?
So, I think, Brian, you said that you could use a ASI camera on this.
Sure, you could. Yeah.
Was that going in the USB port?
No. Wait a minute. Yes, it's going into the.
Yeah,
Oh, I've never
because
done it.
the ASI camera is not going to connect to your cool ribbon cable.
No, it wouldn't.
So yeah, so it would have to. So the problem with the ASI Air is it's got hardware that's basically hard coded into the ASI Air to only do ASI Air stuff.
Hmm.
What Brian's talking about with your spare Raspberry Pi is to create like an all sky camera equivalent. It's the software that's on the ASI Air that would
Do you remember
prevent
that
that, I
first,
think.
one of the first slides I showed with that 3-inch drainage tube using as
Hmm.
the base for it? That's,
Yeah.
you'd have to do something similar or get just a bigger
So
IP7 enclosure.
Russ, that's a good point. Based on what I've been playing around with the camera lens arrangement on the ASI camera, you probably could put one of these fisheye lenses on an ASI camera, have it
Yeah.
point straight up, and just have the ASI Air take some pictures. I don't know if you want it running all night or not, but um,
Yeah, you
you
could.
could probably take like an hour's worth of pictures or something like that. It would
Yeah.
probably work, but it's not going to replace a true dedicated all sky
Yeah.
camera.
But
Right.
Yeah, it
it'll
might
work
be,
great.
might be
It'll
enough
work.
to
Just not with
experiment
a
with it.
filter.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a bunch of pictures. You have to use what is it, FM MPEG, I think, to pull them into a video. I don't know how you do the star trails.
Yeah, so that's the thing
Yeah,
is the all sky camera software has a lot of software that will allow you to do the videos and stuff, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think the ASI Air is going to put all the peripheral information around the edge of the
Right.
Yeah,
pictures.
you'd be better off taking your Windows computer, your laptop or whatever, running the ASI, sorry, running the camera off that and running that Windows version of the All Sky software.
Gotcha.
That
Yeah.
that'd be a way to do it.
Hmm.
And you
Yeah.
Yeah,
could.
especially
You could
since
do
we're
that
already using the
anytime.
laptop for things like Nina and whatever. That's already kind of, for a lot of people, our focal point of astrophotography.
Right. And yeah, you could do it that way.
Yeah, cool.
And you don't have an IP67 enclosure for it, so if it rains, you're kind of SOL.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of a fair weather man when it comes to astrophotography anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This isn't, I don't know what you call this. Not really astrophotography. It sort of is and it sort of isn't. So
Yeah, I know I've seen some of your pictures of like the lightning bolts. Was that captured with this camera?
no,
Or
no,
a while
no,
ago, you caught
that
it.
was me running out in a lightning storm like an idiot
Oh, really?
and setting up my camera with an intervalometer and hoping I was lucky.
Oh, yeah. Well, you sure did get lucky. That was an
I did,
amazing
yeah.
shot there.
Well, that one video you had where like Orion uh, was in like dawn, I guess it was, and then it
Close to
faded
dawn,
into
yeah.
the daytime, and
Yeah.
the constellation just faded into the blue sky.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
That's neat stuff.
Yeah,
Along those lines, you can get a constellation overlay that'll go into the actual image and it'll show you the constellation shapes as part of the image. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff you can do with it. I haven't scratched the surface really.
yeah. I bought my Raspberry Pi years ago when I was still at Fermilab. I'm somebody that downloaded Linux when
Mhm.
the kernel was 0.98 before it even went public, and it was like 80 floppy drives, and I installed it at home on my computer and did a dial-up modem and got the windowing system to work. So I had the Raspberry Pi to experiment reconnecting back to Fermilab with Kerberos authentication. And I actually got it to work, and it just allowed me to practice my Unix skills.
Yeah.
So that's why I have the Raspberry Pi. It's been sitting in a closet for 5 years since I retired.
See,
So this would
same,
be,
same story as me. I threw it in a box and
Yeah.
sat there for a year. So
yeah,
until-
I was hoping that they would have a Raspberry Pi that would be, had enough resources to do like web browsing.
You.
Well,
You know,
the
the,
five.
that's
The
what we
five
did.
is about the same speed as an i3. So a low
Yeah.
end laptop.
that's,
Right.
yeah.
But that's
It'll
pretty
cost
fast.
you.
I mean, when you think about it, that's a pretty fast system for, you know, $50.
Fives aren't 50. To do that, be
Yeah,
about
well,
100.
if you get the low end memory, you can get it pretty cheap.
Oh,
But yeah,
maybe. Yeah, maybe you might be able to. Yeah. But yeah,
I might have bought
different
the
ways
high
to
end one.
skin
I
the
don't know.
pie. Yeah. No, I grew up on Unix, Greg, so I used to write the kernel for Unix, so I know it a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I used to run a token ring network at Fermilab, and
okay.
that was on a Sun IPX Spark station.
Mhm.
So I used to have Jedi skills, not anymore though.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm like Obi-Wan Kenobi, faded, old and faded.
right. I feel you.
Thankfully,
Anyways,
the
we are
yes,
good if you guys want to go out and enjoy this beautiful evening. It's only 8 o'clock, so up
thanks,
to
All
Brian.
you
good.
guys. I could talk all night, but
Yeah. Well,
That was a
thanks
great
again, Brian.
presentation.
Yeah,
yeah,
fantastic
glad you
job.
guys enjoyed it. Yeah.